Hello, Chiefs Kingdom, and welcome to the Milwaukee Chiefs cast live from the Wolf Den. I'm Chris.
And I'm Josh, and tonight we're going to be talking free agency, the draft, and the AFC landscape. And a big reminder that all Southeast Wisconsin residents are invited to join us for game day. Please visit us at mkechiefsfans.com for more about the group, and please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.
And today, as always, we will be talking about your Kansas City Chiefs with our guest today, Tucker Franklin from the podcast Roughing the Kicker. Welcome, Tucker.
Hey guys, I appreciate you having me. I know you guys had Mark Van Sickle on the show. He spoke very highly of you guys. I love Mark. Anything that gets Mark's stamp of approval, I'm in for it. So I'm really happy to be talking with you guys today.
Hey, glad to hear that. We also have our Andy Richter-esque producer, Brian Reynolds, on here with us as well, who will be producing stuff. And we are presented by Complete Weddings and Events, your leading provider of photo, video, DJ, photo booth, lighting, and coordination services. Please visit them at completewedo.com. All right, let's get into the Chiefs right away. So let's talk about free agency. And Tucker, what do you think was the biggest free agent signing of this past week?
Oh, just overall in the NFL, or do you want?
Let's go for the Chiefs, and then for the NFL.
Well, I actually think maybe contrary to a lot of popular belief, the Dan Sorensen one was actually kind of a big deal. If you look at what Dan Sorensen does for the Chiefs, what he does for the team, his value with Kansas City is a lot bigger than it is with any other team in the league. That's for certain. And I think him coming back on a vet minimum deal is about where I expected that to be. And him coming back for another year lets the Chiefs find another safety, probably in the draft, to come in and fill that third safety role for next season and beyond. Him coming in, this is kind of a bridge year for everybody. I don't know how old he is. I think he's still in his 20s, which seems crazy because he looks a lot older than that. I think he's like 29 or coming up on 30. So he's very close to that. But I think Dan Sorensen, that signing was actually a bigger deal than a lot of people made, because at the beginning of the season, I actually wrote a column on arrowheadreport.com saying, hey, a lot of what the Chiefs draft strategy is really hinges on what Dan Sorensen does. And if Dan Sorensen didn't come back, maybe you're looking safety at pick number one. Maybe you're looking at Trevon Moehrig at number one. Now, that was before, obviously, the Chiefs cut both their tackles. But I think that it did have a lot to do with what the Chiefs are going to be looking at defensively for years to come. And I think Dan Sorensen, I personally, I shouldn't speak for you guys, I've never had an issue with Dan Sorensen as the player. I have an issue with how Dan Sorensen gets used, right? So if he's, covering up tight ends and getting bullied by big bodied tight ends, I don't like the way he's used that way. But if he's used as a third safety, I know the third safety still gets a lot of snaps, but if he's in that third safety role where he doesn't have to cover, tight ends or hang with speed guys, I think he does great. And I think that you just have to know your role when it comes with Dan Sorensen. And I think the Chiefs are still they started to figure that out more towards the end of the year, right? Because Dan Sorensen really picked it up. He led the team in tackles. He had a good season last year. But I think that when it comes to Dan Sorensen, you just gotta know what he is, and you can't try to make him more than he is.
Dirty Dan, by the way, is 31 from Riverside, California, aka the 951. That's actually where my wife went to college, so I gotta throw a little cheers out there to that area. So yeah, he's a little bit older, but I think that we're all Sorensen fans here. We definitely, when we were talking about playoff games, anytime we would say the big play is going to happen, on defense, usually we were talking about something that he was going to do. And it was in those situations where he was used in the correct role. So let me ask you this. Do you think that Demarcus Robinson was a similar situation where he has more value for the Chiefs than any other team?
I think that's pretty clear, because if you look at the two deals he signed, they both were vet minimums. Last year, 1 year deal, that's a vet minimum. This year, a 1 year deal, that's a vet minimum. Obviously, the veteran minimum went up, so it looks like he's getting paid more. But I think that it is kind of the same thing. I think that's a good call. He's not the wide receiver two that the Chiefs want, that they still need, I should say. They shouldn't make him the wide receiver two. They shouldn't force him into a wide receiver two role. He's played more snaps than McCole Hardman and Byron Pringle combined. That was a fun stat brought out there by Ken Swanson from Arrowhead Pride today. I thought that was interesting. But bringing him back, I think, is a good depth piece. And he's a solid wide receiver three if you do find somebody in the draft, in free agency still. But there's still some guys out there that Chiefs could sign, I think, can get better at wide receiver too. I think there's still guys out there that can make this team better. And it's all about improving, right? That's what free agency is about. It's about improving. And I think that sometimes people, I know I've seen this recently on Twitter, that some people are saying, well, Byron Pringle can play wide receiver too. McCole Hardman can be the wide receiver too. It's not about settling with what the Chiefs have. Free agency is about improving at the spots that you need to improve on. Now the Chiefs are kind of in a spot right now where it's like, okay, you can't really improve at left and right tackle right now. Can't really do that with how the market's gone. There wasn't, outside of Trent Williams, I don't know if there was any tackles better than Mitchell Schwartz and Eric Fisher. I think that's kind of the spot the Chiefs got stuck in there. So when it comes to wide receivers and Demarcus Robinson, I like him. I just wish he wouldn't run backwards when he catches the ball. If he can fix that, that'd be phenomenal. But I do think that signing is very similar to kind of a bridge year, kind of giving them some depth. Now, if you think about it too, they go out, they sign a wide receiver, they draft a wide receiver. Say they just get another wide receiver 2, then Demarcus Robinson's your wide receiver 3, and look at your depth then. That's McCole Hardman and Byron Pringle, which I'm A-okay with those guys being your depth wide receivers. I think your wide receiver room looks a whole lot better with Demarcus Robinson back than without him.
So let me ask you this. Do you think that we truly missed out in free agency on a wide receiver 2, or is it going to be better to draft that in the first place?
I think it probably would have been better to draft it in the first place. T.Y. Hilton was probably the last wide receiver I would have said, okay, if he can get in, I know he's not the typical X wide receiver that we're looking for here, but he's still a guy that can get open, run underneath routes. That's what you're looking for, really, is on a wide receiver 2 is another wide receiver option that can get open when, Travis Kelce's double teamed, when Tyreek Hill's double teamed, like we saw in the Super Bowl, right? They really made the Chiefs receivers useless. I mean, that has to do a lot with the scheme they played. They got some dudes on that defense. They got some linebackers that can run around, and they've got some defensive linemen that can get after it. I think that was really the big scheme. The really thing that I took away is you got to have some dudes on defense to beat the Chiefs. A lot of people like to say, oh, well, the Buccaneers laid out the blueprint. The blueprint is just to have really good players. That's essentially what the blueprint ended up being. But I think that gets a little blown out of proportion a little bit. But if the Chiefs do have another option, a wide receiver, that'll obviously help them. I was really kind of hoping that McCole Hardman was going to take that step. Now, a lot of receivers in their third season under Andy Reid's system really do break out in their third year. That's really the breakout year. I'm still holding out hope for McCole Hardman. I'm almost done with it. It's just one of those things where, like, okay, last strike. That's kind of what it is at this point. I feel like I've given McCole Hardman plenty of chances to kind of show what he's got here and everything, but we'll see. I'll let it go one more year, kind of like in college basketball. You can't judge a coach off of 2 years. You got to let him have a full recruiting cycle. You got to let McCole Hardman have himself a full recruiting cycle here. So I think that's kind of what I'm looking for with the wide receivers and everything. But yeah, I think the draft, I think you don't draft a wide receiver in round 1 unless you go for Bateman or Bateman falls to 31. I think Bateman's the only receiver you take in 31 because from 63 to 127, you can probably get a quality receiver. I think after round 3 is more of guys where are going to be developmental guys, but I think it's still in the third round. You can get a guy that's going to contribute right away. I think Seth Williams, Connor Christopherson just talked about this on the Roughing the Kicker podcast on Friday. That Seth Williams is probably that last guy to come off the board that you'd say, okay, that guy can contribute right away. And pretty much after that, you're looking at developmental guys, which I think that this wide receiver class is thick, it's deep, and it's exactly what the Chiefs want this time of year.
Good stuff. So is there anybody else out on the free agent wire, any position that you think that we can actually target, or is that ship kind of sailed and we're on to the draft?
Man, that's a really good question. I haven't looked at an updated list in a little bit, but I know Aldon Smith is still out there, Mizzou guy. Played well for Dallas, and I think that really edge is going to be a position that the Chiefs are going to need to lock up heading into the draft. Because statistics show if you don't take an edge, the best edges come in rounds 1. Really, essentially, you get elite edges from rounds 1. There are some outliers, but that's statistically where the most dominant edges come from in round 1. And I really don't see the Chiefs doing that, especially if they don't get a left tackle in free agency. Maybe they choose to go edge if they do get a left tackle, but at this point, your options are Alejandro Villanueva or Russell Okung, which, as I mentioned earlier, not really an upgrade at this point from where you were last season at the tackle position. So they're kind of in a rock and a hard place, and it's hard at the draft when you get stuck looking for positions. When you want to get in the position where you're looking at, okay, what player is the best available, number one, and could help my team for not only right now, but for the future as well. I think the Chiefs are really going to need to have a very foresight heavy draft on this because they need depth at a lot of places. It's a very top heavy roster. And if we see the attrition happen the same way it happened last year, they're going to be in trouble. I mean, they won't make it into the AFC Championship if the attrition happens the same way with the roster they have right now. So I wish that the Chiefs would go out and sign somebody like Aldon Smith, kind of shore up that opposite D-end edge role of Frank Clark because they haven't really had an edge be able to do that, to be solid on 3 downs across from Frank Clark. It's frustrating that hasn't been it, but they need somebody on defense to kind of do that. Maybe another linebacker. It's going to depend on what Bashaw Breeland does too. Do they sign another corner? Do they draft another corner? They could draft a slot guy. They could move L'Jarius Sneed out wide, or they could draft an out wide guy, move L'Jarius Sneed in there. And, L'Jarius Sneed, we're big fans of L'Jarius Sneed at the Roughing the Kicker podcast, and rightfully so. His versatility is amazing. And I think that a lot of this free agency is going to depend on Bashaw Breeland here coming the rest of the way, and what the Chiefs can do at the defensive edge and the left tackle. Also center. I think that we forget about that a lot. The Chiefs don't have a center right now. Austin Ryder has a deal out now. It's been over a week since the Chiefs extended him a deal. Hasn't accepted it yet. I kind of think that he thought his market was going to be a little bit heavier than it was. I think his market's not as strong as he anticipated, but I hope he comes back to Kansas City. But then again, we're in this spot where if you don't sign Austin Ryder, then the Chiefs are kind of in a pickle here. Because then if you go into the draft needing a left tackle and a center, I think it gets really dangerous. You can't go into the draft needing a left tackle, center, and an edge. I think you just need the ideal situation is to go in just needing one.
Yeah. By the way, a big screw you to the Raiders for not even entertaining the idea of Rodney Hudson coming back to Kansas City. That was a bunch of crap. So speaking of free agency and the edge, do you think it was a mistake not bringing Melvin Ingram in? I know that he was in and out of the building without a deal, which I'm inclined to say that if they didn't sign him, there's probably a good reason for it. But what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I go back and forth on Melvin Ingram. I think it would have been a fun signing just because he's from the Chargers, right? It's always fun to get division rivals into the team, but he also is a solid player. I think he's had some health concerns in the last few years that really worry me, and the Chiefs really want somebody who's going to be on the field because Taco Charlton has health injuries too. He's got a checkered injury past. I mean, ever since he came into the league, I think it was like 3 years ago, he's missed with like 4 or 5 injuries, which is kind of frustrating. I hate to see that guy. He's got a ton of talent. I think he'll do well if he's ever on the field, and we've seen him do well on the field. You just can't stay on the field. I do think that was a good signing for the Chiefs to kind of get some depth into the rotation. But Melvin Ingram, I think that ship has kind of sailed, like you mentioned. Him coming into the building and then leaving it without a deal is not great. But I will say, I can't remember who reported it. Maybe Ian Rappaport probably said that they don't have a deal yet. And I thought I thought his wording was very interesting as he used yet. And you don't usually see that with a lot of teams. And they said they left the building without a deal. He said they left without a deal yet. So I'm still kind of holding out hope for Melvin Ingram, but I do think at this point, Aldon Smith is kind of the guy that I'm looking for. I think he fits better in the Spags system anyway. And he's more of a Spags edge to begin with. So that's kind of who I'm looking for. And I really do think the Chiefs need to add edge. That's kind of, right there, left tackle is the most important thing, but edge is, right there behind.
Yeah, and definitely Aldon Smith being a local guy, I think always adds some nice nostalgia and everything like that. So, Chris, before we bounce into the draft, anything else you want to throw out for free agency questions? We want to bounce. We got this knowledge wealth here in front of us.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess, Tucker, if there was one of the 3 positions you'd rather fill in free agency than in the draft, center, edge, or left tackle, which would you rather fill in free agency?
I'd probably say edge at the moment. I think you look at the center market after Austin Ryder is non-existent. You look at the left tackle market after Villanueva and Okung, you're looking at guys I don't even know after that, essentially. And I think that the edge market is going to be really crucial too, because there's a very thick offensive line draft class. And I think that it will play in the Chiefs' favor, especially in the interior wise. There's a lot of good interior guys. When it comes to the edges, there's a lot of good ones that could start right away in the first round, but then you're looking at developmental guys after that. Essentially, I think after Patrick Jones comes off the board, maybe in the early second round, you're looking at guys that you're going to really need to start, developing and letting in be in rotations, be in for 1 or 2 downs, and before you can let them be in for all 3 downs. And that's really what the Chiefs are looking for, is a guy that can go in all 3 downs. So I think edge is probably the most important. That can't be an immediate fix, because I really don't see them taking an edge in round 1. I know Jason Owe just had a insane pro day, but there's no way, especially with the way tackle is and the way that the tackle draft is and how thick the class is. I think that tackle is going to be addressed that way. And it makes me nervous, really, when you think about it. You know, you could potentially have 2 rookie. I say rookie in air quotes because of Lucas Niang could be in a tackle where he could play guard. I mean, but the Chiefs have a slew of guards right now. All of a sudden, for some reason, they have a bunch of guards, but no tackles. But we'll see what happens on that front there with how the offensive line configurates. Yeah, they don't have any centers either. That's another big one. I mean, we've gotten to the point now in Kansas City where you're like, okay, well, if the Chiefs don't sign Austin Ryder, they're in trouble. And that's not a great position to be in. You get to the point where we were just talking about signing Trent Williams, who is now the highest paid offensive lineman. And now we've gotten to the point of, well, the Chiefs better sign Austin Ryder. So that's how fast it's like evolved. The free agency situation has evolved. And I think it's just so fascinating. And I think I described it as I was kind of shell shocked on how fast it went from, oh, the Chiefs could get the number 1 free agent on the market right now, to, well, they better re-sign their center who's been moderately average.
Yeah, it seems like they've lost a lot of leverage in their negotiating power. You know, that's the thing that really concerns me, that, you know, if they actually do go after Okung or Villanueva, they're probably going to end up paying him more than they did Eric Fisher. And you know, to your point, you're not upgrading over Eric Fisher with either one of those guys. So I guess we'll see what happens.
One last free agent question that I just want to throw out. Do you see a world where Fisher or Schwartz ends up back on the team at any point this season?
It's funny because I was thinking about the same thing today. Just, you know, I was just working along and thinking, oh, what if they do come back? Because I think I looked at PFF's, you know, free agent rankings they had. Like Mitchell Schwartz was like number 4 still available. And you're just like, man, like out of top 100, Mitchell Schwartz is number 4. The dude is going through rehab. I don't know if you guys saw this posted on Instagram. The dude can't like bend over right now. He's got carrying around like a grabber that he's got too. So that kind of worries me a bit. I just don't see how he can come back from a back injury and play at a high level. That worries me. Eric Fisher, I see Eric Fisher's injury too, with it being an Achilles. You got elite athletes running at you and you're trying to run backwards. Essentially, I mean, you're moving backwards, trying to stop elite athletes moving forwards. That's not great either. I could see it potentially happening as a little feel-good story. I don't know. I don't think that either of them can play at an effective level anymore. And it stinks to say. And I know a lot of Chiefs fans were hurt when they cut both Fisher and Schwartz, but, you know, roughing the kicker, we've been talking about that for a while. I mean, as soon as basically the season got over, we're like, well, you look at Schwartz's deal. They're probably going to move on from him. You look at Fisher's deal coming off of an Achilles injury. You got to kind of move on from him too, especially with the low cap. It sucks. It does. I say this all the time where I love football, but I hate the business of football. I think that's kind of the consensus really feeling around the NFL. But yeah, I hope that the Chiefs can kind of come to a deal with Mitchell Schwartz. I'd love to see Mitchell Schwartz come back just to a football field to get him play, because he is just so good as a right tackle. But I think with the back injury, I mean, you know, once you have one back injury, you're going to have multiple back injuries. And it just sucks to see both of those guys go out the way that they did injured, but I'd like to see him. I don't know if it's going to happen though, realistically.
Yeah. Brian, who are you going to miss the most from the team that's not coming back?
Oh my gosh. Oh, I don't know. It's really up in the air. I mean, who did we sign? Okay, and Tucker, you have to understand here, I am the casual football fan on the team now.
Yeah.
Listening to you guys go, like, this is a very deep analysis of the offseason free agency, and it's like the first cycle. Like, I'm pretty much like, oh, hey, the first game's here, and I paid attention every year, and I went to games every year with Josh, or I've been to there, but like getting this depth of knowledge, I'm learning a lot, and so, I remember there was who is it that, like, who was the biggest shock that did not get asked to come back? I remember seeing that on Instagram, and
were you talking for last season? Or are you talking like Dustin Colquitt maybe?
Yeah, I think it was something like, it was along those lines. That was it. Yeah, it was like my eyebrows went would go way up. I'm like, oh, I thought we all loved him.
Yeah.
And then it's basically what you said, Tucker. It's like the business of football. Like you're loved, you're beloved, everyone. You contributed a lot of great things, but it's time to move on, and then it's time to go. And I would say this, like, and you were talking about the back injury, and there was a kind of like a little kind of pushback in my mind where you said, like, it's hard to come back, and you're right, it is. But ever since like Alex Smith came back for this season, at least, I was like, I think anything's possible. And I was just like, just stop showing the footage of his injury on ESPN while I'm eating dinner at the sports bar, please. I can't.
Right.
Exactly.
But you're not wrong. I mean, ideally, it's not that's not the way you want to go. You don't want to have an injury going into the next season, because it's like, well, that's not playing at a high level, and we need someone who can contribute and not be in pain and not be a liability like that. So, but then again, that's always my thought process is like, well, if we've seen it happen once before with something that seems pretty gruesome, so it could happen, but ideally we would not have that happen. So, but yeah, that would say that cold quit is my go-to here. So
yeah, so I'll throw this out. The next book that I have on my list to read, have you ever heard of a title called The Throwback Special?
I've heard of it.
So the Throwback Special, it's a group of friends, and there's 22 of them, and they get together every year and reenact the Joe Theismann broken leg thing. And so I've had friends, exactly. So I've had friends recommend this, but the book apparently is all about the process of how they pick who's going to be who. And it's like getting into their lives and stuff. So we'll throw that out. The Throwback Special, that book isn't sponsoring us. Neither is Red Wine, but we're having both of those. And if they want to, we're open. So anyway, so one more free agent question that I think I want to ask. Where's Alex Smith going to end up?
Man, wouldn't it be sweet if he ended his career in Kansas City? Wouldn't that just be awesome? Yeah. If he comes back, he's a backup quarterback behind Patrick Mahomes. It's kind of a full circle moment. Kind of like, so I've been rewatching a lot of the Star Wars movies recently, just because, I just like to go through it. I'm all the way, I've got number 9 left. Okay. So I've got the last one left. So I've made it through this whole week pretty much watching these Star Wars movies. It'd be a little bit like, Yoda coming back and seeing Luke Skywalker, kind of when he goes to the temple and he's like, I'm gonna burn it, and and Yoda's like, yeah, well, and he strikes the lightning bolt down. It'd kind of be like that scenario right there, where Yoda shows up. yeah, it'd be like that right there, and just with the whole NFL, the NFL is the tree, and he just needs a little bit of help from Alex Smith to bring it on home. But yeah, I think that would be awesome. It makes sense, just storyline wise. I don't know how much contractually it makes sense, but yeah. I don't know if he'll get signed, but I think the Chiefs will give him probably a good look, just knowing the franchise, and they love him. They think he's a stand-up guy. Andy Reid will probably be calling him. I'm sure that they haven't lost contact, so it would be pretty cool to see Alex Smith return.
Yeah, I think
the team that I've heard recently is the Jacksonville Jaguars, given that Urban Meyer's down there, and they're gonna probably need a veteran backup for Trevor Lawrence. So that's one I heard yesterday.
Yeah, I would say that's my prediction, but I'd like to see, before it's all said and done, him to end up in Kansas City. And I think it would be cool to see him roll into a coaching staff. He's always kind of had this coach vibe, and I don't know, is there a world where I see somewhere in the next 5 years he goes from being Mahomes backup to Mahomes quarterback coach? That would be super cool. Yeah. Okay, so what do you think has been the best free agent signing in the NFL?
You're seeing a lot of guys return to their teams on 1-year deals. Obviously, Trent Williams didn't do that. That was an absolute monster contract. They backed up the Brinks truck to his house, essentially. I think Juju Smith-Schuster was an interesting one. You finally got to see the 1-year deal effect kind of kick in, because Juju wants to cash out eventually. That's what he wants to do. That's what he's trying to do. If he comes to Kansas City, maybe he doesn't get the amount of targets he gets in Pittsburgh. And I think that's ultimately why he chose to stay in Pittsburgh. Yeah, they got Chase Claypool. Yeah, they've got I don't remember the guy's name, Deontay Johnson. There we go. Deontay
Johnson,
yeah. I tried to combine like 14 different wide receivers in that name.
Mapletron.
Right. Yeah. They've got a good wide receiver core over there, but he's still going to get his targets. Meaning Kansas City, I know a lot of people like to say, well, Travis Kelce will be covered, Tyreek Hill will be covered. You'll get your targets too. Yeah, but I mean, it's harder to compete with Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill than it is to compete with Chase Claypool. So I can see how how that thought process is. I think JJ Watt going to the Cardinals is big. I know that a lot of people like to make fun of that's where, players like to go at the end of their careers, Arizona and everything. They got other old guys on there, but I've always liked the Cardinals. We kind of talked about that on Fridays, Roughing the Kicker, where what teams we like to root for kind of outside of the Chiefs. And I like Kyler Murray. I like, I always thought DeAndre Hopkins was the best receiver. I still think he is the best receiver in the game. I mean, you see him go up on 4 guys and pull down a Hail Mary. That's awesome. And I like what the Cardinals are doing down there. I like to see him be in the playoffs, be competitive and everything like that. So I think that probably have to be your best free agent signing, right? I mean, JJ Watt going to another team was a big deal. We'll see what else happens. I think that there's been some teams that have some really weird off seasons. If you look at the Giants, not really sure what they're doing. The Texans have signed every mid-tier free agent available. None of those really moved the needle. The Patriots have signed a bunch of players too, but none of them really moved the needle for me either. So that's really what you want to go in free agencies. You want to sign guys, especially if you're a top tier team, that other teams have to account for on game day. And that's kind of what I kind of look at it. Matt Verderam from Fanside first brought that up to my attention. I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool way to look at it. And when I look at, the Giants, the Patriots, the Texans, none of those guys do it for me. None of those guys, I think, well, you got to really game plan for that guy on Sunday. It's not a whole lot. So I don't know how much the landscape of the NFL competitive wise has really changed. That'll change obviously during the draft. Once, we get rolled out of training camp, we get a better idea. But I think that the biggest one is obviously JJ Watt.
See, and I honestly think that we did sign, a free agent that you have to account for. You got to account for Joe Thuney. I mean, you're going to know where he is on the line. And we might not have any tackles, but we sure as hell have some guards. And I mean, Thuney has played tackle and center before. I mean, I would hope that we didn't sign him to the contract that we did, hoping that we can convert him to something else. But who knows, But so let's kind of pivot into the draft and where we think we're going. It sounds like you think that in the first round we're picking a tackle.
I think it has to be, especially even if you sign a left tackle, I think you have to draft a tackle. If you sign Alejandro Villanueva or Russell Okung, it's going to be a 1 or 2 year deal, and at that point, you're going to need somebody else. If you look at this class, I mean, man, Alex Leatherwood just had one heck of a pro day for Alabama. Liam Eichenberg, his pro day is not until the 31st, I believe. Notre Dame's is on the 31st, so he's going to have a really good day. I think he's probably the most day one ready tackle, around 31. I think that if the Chiefs don't sign somebody and they drafted left tackle that they need to start right away, I'd feel comfortable with Liam Eichenberg there. He has a very similar – I don't know. I've always struggled with how to put this for people to understand it, but his career projection is kind of the same as Eric Fisher. I can see kind of that little same career path where he comes in, he starts and is incredibly solid, just a very solid guy. He's not really going to be a 14-time Pro Bowler and he's not going to be a scrub. He's just going to be very good. And that's really what the Chiefs need. I don't know if they'll try to make a splash and trade up for Rashawn Slater, or if they trade up for, Christian Darrisaw. There's a lot of guys up there that could make a move. I don't see the Chiefs moving up. I always struggle with trading up and down, right? Because it takes 2 to tango. The Chiefs have got to find a team that wants to move down, got to find a team that wants to move up too. So I kind of struggle with kind of talking about trading up, trading down, unless we hear something from the team or sources saying that they want to move up or down. There could be a situation too where if the Chiefs really have their guy and they're looking at the tackles, and there are some tackle hungry teams ahead of them, and if they see Samuel Cosmi or Elijah Vera Tucker or Rashawn Slater, really, who is my favorite lineman in this draft, if they see them fall into that probably 20-ish range, I wouldn't be shocked if they went and traded up for them, because it's going to be a position they're going to need to fill right away. But there's still a ton of guys, even if they don't move. There's just a lot of guys from the offensive tackle that can really come in and be solid like next year if they do sign a veteran tackle. I think that's kind of the ideal scenario for me, is they sign an Okung or a Villanueva, draft a tackle, whether it's, Leatherwood, Eichenberg, Tevin Jenkins, I think, is another guy that could be really good if he's still there. Jalen Mayfield from Michigan. There's a lot of guys, and I've named a ton of them already, and there's still more out there. that they could come in and fill a need and be some good depth in this draft.
Gotcha. Yeah. And you kind of answered the next question that I was going to go with, which was about trading up or down. So let's ask this. If you were the GM, what would your first 3-round approach be? And where I'll kind of frame this is I talk about a football draft, and you have your quarterback. I think that the first 3 rounds, you should let the draft come to you, but there should be a weapon. There should be an elite offensive talent. There should be an elite defensive talent. Usually what you're ending up talking about is more protection for your quarterback or something to that effect. So what would your approach be for the first 3 rounds?
It's interesting because, we've been doing a mock draft at Roughing the Kicker. We're now 7 weeks into our mock draft, and I was curious, and I went into all the mock drafts, and I said, I wonder what positions we've taken, just like going back and what we've done in the first 3 rounds. So I went back and I collected all the numbers. In our first round, in our 7 mock drafts, we have not selected anyone outside of an offensive lineman. So, we sometimes go center with, I think we had a Creed Humphrey, Lana Dickerson there twice, but offensive tackle has been every time. So in round 2, we usually go wide receiver. We went safety, linebacker, interior offensive line. And I think the biggest thing too would be if the Chiefs go tackle and Creed Humphrey is there at 63, or they trade up from 63 to kind of get him in the 40 range. I think that would be huge, because I think Creed Humphrey could be a guy that could contribute probably day one. A lot of people are worried about his athleticism, and he went and tested out the wazoo. I don't know if you guys pay attention to the RAS scores. It's this guy from I don't know, he covers the Lions, and he is Math Bomb on Twitter is what he is, but he does a bunch of athletic scores. He puts together all the testing and how they rank percentile wise and everything. And it's basically 1 to 10. It gives you a numeric value on kind of these athletic abilities. Creed Humphrey tested a 10. And a lot of people were calling him an average athlete out of Oklahoma, said he didn't move very quick, but he tested really well. I think he had 36 on the bench press, ran like a 4.8 40 as an offensive lineman, which is insane. So I've really come around on him. I think he'd be a good pick even in 31, but at 63 as well, if he's there. Lana Dickerson is a guy who I think talent-wise is off the charts. I mean, he won the Remington Trophy, I think is what it's called, for the best center in the country. Mm-hmm. All those college trophies have a bunch of weird names. I can never remember which one is to which. But the Remington Trophy, I think, goes to the best center in the country, and he won it actually last season over Creed Humphrey. The talent's there. The thing with Lana Dickerson is he struggles to stay on the field. He's had 4 season-ending injuries in 5 college seasons. So that's a little worrisome for a lot of NFL teams. So I'm okay if he slides all the way to 63 and you take him at 63. Totally cool with that. I think that's a good position to keep him in. And that could happen too with, teams not being able to get medicals from guys. And I wouldn't be shocked if that happens. That happened with Bryce Hall last year. He slid all the way down to the 6th round when he probably should have went in round 3 or 4. But we've seen that a lot. And I think that's kind of where you go. And I like wide receiver pick 63 too. It really depends on where the board falls. There's a lot of good guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown is there. You got Diami Brown could probably be a round 2 prospect as well. Tylan Wallace could be a round 2 prospect. And then I think you could look edge there as well. Pat Jones, I talked about Pat Jones. He could be kind of one of those day 1 starters and be effective on that end. But if you don't take an edge at 3, I kind of think you got to go, or edge at 2, you got to go edge at 3. I think that's kind of how you got to go. That's how I look at it is offensive line, wide receiver, edge guy. Because then you're now trying to get, okay, those 3 guys could contribute right away, but it wouldn't hurt you if they didn't, right? So you'd be fine if it's depth at those 3 spots. But then, like, once you get later in the draft, you're looking for depth pieces. The Chiefs really do need to fill out the depth of this draft. But kind of a long road to a short thought. You kind of want to go offensive line is what I would go first, and then wide receiver, and look at the defensive edge situation.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good. So what do you think the development, by the way, the Remington Award is what the center award is called. Yes. And then of course, the Buckus Award, I think we all know that one. That's for a good linebacker. But so let's just say, we go through, we have the draft, we do everything that we need to do. What are you projecting for the AFC West standings this coming year?
Well, I still think when Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback, your team has the best chance to win any football game. I kind of caught some heat on Twitter because there's some people saying that, Patrick Mahomes can negate a lot of these issues. And I said, well, can he play 3 different offensive line positions? No. That's not going to happen. Can he catch the ball that he throws? I know Marcus Mariota did it, but that's not very likely. He's got to have pieces around him. Football is an ultimate team sport, and I compared kind of the Chiefs. I regret this comparison, but I compared to the Chiefs to the kind of 2007 Cavaliers of, LeBron James and the ragtag group of Cavs.
Yeah.
Mahomes can't do that. Mahomes can't just carry a bunch of dudes to the Super Bowl. I almost said the finals, but can't carry him to the Super Bowl because football is a different game than basketball is, right? You only have 4 other guys. Patrick Mahomes is going to have to deal with, 10 other guys on the field. So I think that the Chiefs really do need to fill out their depth. They need to find some pieces that can really help out Patrick Mahomes. The thing that really worries me about I'm not saying Brett Veach does this, but about us constantly relying on Patrick Mahomes is I don't want to wear out the treads on this tire too soon. We've got him for the next 15 years. There's no reason to, make Patrick Mahomes do more than he has to. And I know he's a really great improviser, really good player and everything like that. Just probably me as a worrying personality. I want to make life easier on Patrick Mahomes in his young years, right? So we can enjoy him in his older years.
Yeah, no, I'd say that I agree with that. I agree. I don't see a reason why we don't win the AFC West. It's when you get into the rest of the playoff picture where some of this gets a little more difficult. But yeah, I mean, we don't want to wear out the treads on the tire, and you don't want to get into a situation where he doesn't feel like he's getting what he needs, which I don't think he does. And I think that he's in about as lockstep with the organization as you could possibly be. It's not like the Aaron Rodgers situation that we live with up here, which is just bizarre to watch all the time. It seems like he's pretty on pace with what the organization's doing, but you don't want to get into this Russell Wilson situation where all of a sudden everything's great and then all of a sudden it's not great. Mm-hmm. So yeah. All right. So what do you think the final standings are going to be in order? So Chiefs, then who?
I think the Chargers are going to make a push this season. I really like Justin Herbert. I like what they're doing down there. I think they probably made the best head coaching hire. I know that they took a defensive-minded coach, but he's probably the best he's probably the most offensive, defensive-minded coach that there is, as weird as that sounds, because he's very progressive when it comes to defensive coaches because he knows you got to stop the pass first. It's always pass first, and now the way the league's going, it's pass first. That's kind of a nightmare for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, I think. They could really struggle against the Chargers this year, especially with this whole head coaching change and everything. I believe they got Gus Bradley Gus Bradley was there. Gus Bradley went to where did Gus Bradley go? He stayed in the AFC West. He was at the Chargers, but he went to the Raiders, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he's a D coordinator for the Raiders.
Still got it. But I think that'll be interesting.
Google.
I don't see right. I don't really see the Raiders taking a step forward. Broncos aren't looking too great. They've had kind of a weird offseason. They tagged Justin Simmons, but then signed they signed a cornerback. I can't remember who it was. Kyle Fuller. Yeah. So their secondary looks good. You always got to bulk up your secondary if you're going against Patrick Mahomes 2 times a year. So that's probably a good move for them. I still think the Chiefs, win it by a couple of games. I don't think the Chargers are quite to the point where they can keep lockstep with the Chiefs, throughout the season. There's going to be some, Chargers-esque moments, but I think that franchise is very close to breaking out of Chargering, I guess you can say. And you had Clemsoning for a while, when Clemson could always find a way to go something wrong in college football. Now they're the cream of the crop in college football. You could see the same thing with the Chargers. I mean, the Chargers and the Falcons both have that, kind of, don't know how to win type of mentality. And I think the Chargers are really turning the corner. I like Justin Herbert. Now, I would not be surprised if you start hearing the national pundits. That's why you got to always listen to Roughing the Kicker in our podcast here. That's why you got to stay local when you listen to Chiefs stuff. There's going to be a lot of national pundits saying, oh, the Chargers are going to win the AFC West. The Chargers are going to do this. Justin Herbert's going to be the best quarterback in the AFC West. That's shenanigans. That's absolutely malarkey. I mean, you should not pay any lip service to that. Don't interact with it online. That's not going to happen. I know there's going to be a lot of things. That's a fun thing to talk about, right? It's going to be fun to talk about burying Patrick Mahomes. They've been doing it to Tom Brady ever since,
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go.
So, I mean, they've just been trying to bury Tom Brady, and he just can't go away. They're going to keep doing it to Mahomes, too. That's just how it's going to happen. Chiefs fans have to kind of shift that mindset of being like underdogs to, okay, we're the best now. You don't have to try to defend yourself at every turn. I think that's sometimes what Chiefs fans online get caught in is like, okay, well, we want to defend ourselves all the time. You don't have to, right? Just let the play do the talking.
So who's flying the plane into the mountain more, John Gruden and the Raiders, or Drew Lock as quarterback of the Broncos?
Man, I hate to talk bad about Drew Lock. I was telling you guys I'm a Mizzou fan before the podcast started, but man, he's not good, is he? It's just this is the point.
I went to Lee Summit High School as well, so I mean, I got to talk to Drew Lock here. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I get to the point where I'm like, okay, well, I think that Drew Lock isn't terrible. This is the point where I'm at now. I don't think he's terrible. I think he'd be better in a different system. Maybe that's just like a cop-out for me as to kind of rationalize that Drew Lock isn't terrible. I want Drew Lock to be good. I really do. I'm holding on to that one. Do I want him to be good for the Denver Broncos? Absolutely not. I think that's kind of where it was at. Like, okay, I'm glad that it didn't work with the Broncos, but I think they need to move on with him. You know, give him to a middle tier team, the Vikings, see what happened there. You know, Kirk Cousins is almost done, probably. See what happens, or I don't know. He needs to go to a different team, I think. I think his time in Denver is taking people that are unhappy with him. I wouldn't be surprised if the Broncos draft a quarterback this season. Yep. And that kind of closes the door on that. So we'll see. But the Raiders, man, the Raiders are weird. One of my favorite people to talk to is Hondo Carpenter from the SI All Raiders site, Raider Maven. And he's just a ball of electricity. He loves talking about the Las Vegas Raiders, and he lives out in Vegas. He's really got his finger on the pulse, not only with that team, but what the fans are feeling as well. And I haven't talked to him, and I've been meaning to talk to him about, you know, what is going on with that offensive line. You know, John Gruden showing all this faith in Derek Carr, but this offensive line obviously isn't. So this weird situation going on down there. They got all those COVID problems too, if you remember. Man, they're not even a lovable bunch either. It's just like, that's basically my thoughts are just on the Raiders, because sometimes I can't put it into words. But man, I don't know. It's going to be a race for last, essentially, between those two teams in the division.
That's great. That's great. All right. So
can I give a quick shout out to Josh Kingsley's marketing concept of flying the plane into the mountain? You don't know this, Tucker, probably, but that's a thing he came up with for one of his marketing concepts. So one day he'll write a paper about this and publish it hopefully on Amazon. But yeah, that's the concept. What's that? The concept of just we're gonna take this baby down and everyone's going with us.
No. So the real context for it, and this was something that specifically, I won't name who it is, but I work for a really big company, and we were talking about the road mapping process, and there's a business strategy of you can attack, you can defend, and this is, you know, talking about market share, or you can harvest, which is take products that are going to life cycle out at some point and make as much money as you can. And I was like, no, there's actually a fourth one. It's fly the plane into the mountain, which is an aggressive form of harvest. It's buckle up. This is going to be fun. Nobody gets complain when this ends badly. And I feel like, you know, the Raiders are kind of a perpetual state of flying the plane into the mountain. And, you know, the Chargers, that's the pick every year, and we expect them to be good. But keep in mind, Dean Spanos is a plane, and he is flying into the mountain, and that's just how he is. I mean, my in-laws are from San Diego, and I don't know that it's possible to take somebody less seriously than Dean Spanos is out there. It's anyway. So let's real quick before we talk a minute amount of college basketball and get out of here. What is your predictions for 1 through 7? We're going to assume that there's still only going to be 7 playoff teams. So who gets the bye? And then what are the 3 wild card weekend matchups?
Man, I like to still think that the Chiefs can get the bye, but this roster isn't really inspiring at the moment. I like to Brett Veach will figure it out. It'll get turned around. It'll be a legitimate football team come, you know, August. So I'll say the Chiefs still get the 1. The Ravens need to find a wide receiver. They've had almost every wide receiver free agent turn them down, which is they might be having a worse free agency than the Chiefs, and that's kind of hard to do. But I think that I like Lamar Jackson too, and I want to see him do well. And I just think he's missing something. There's just something not there. Either it's organizational support, it's, you know, support on the field. There's something not there. I'm not going to say they're the 2 seed. Man, I'll probably put them 4, I guess, 4 or 5. The Bills will probably be the 2 seed. Actually, And because the Bills are doing the whole little run it back thing. I don't know if you guys have seen that. Just re-signing everybody. Matt Milano came back. Their offensive line is coming back all intact essentially, which is great for Josh Allen. Josh Allen played really well last year. I like Josh Allen. I like the Bills. They're a hard team to hate. We talk about the Raiders being an easy team to hate. The Bills are a hard team to hate. I like them. I'll probably say they're 2. I think the Patriots sneak in there. Let's say they sneak in at 7. I just want that to be fun. I just want to see Cam Newton do well again. I'm probably holding on to my childhood too much by wanting Cam Newton to be well and do good. So what do I have? I got the Ravens at 4. I think the Ravens at 4 is probably a good spot. The Browns will sneak in there too at, I'll say 6. Well, they could win the division. That wouldn't shock me. No, I'll say 6, because then I'll probably put the Steelers in there at, well, they have to be the other wild card then, since I have the Ravens in there. Boy, maybe I should have prepped this before.
So you need an AFC South winner is what you need at this point.
There you go. Yes. So I will actually give that to the Colts, because I think, listen, I've been out on Carson Wentz for a little bit, but if anybody can fix Carson Wentz, it's going to be Frank Reich. Yep. I think that he could be the only person to turn him around. They essentially have the same team they did last year with a worse quarterback. So we'll see. I want to see them do well. I got one of my good buddies from college, who was my college roommate for 5 years. He was with me, and he's a Colts fan. So I've known, and he's a diehard Colts fan. So I'm glad to see they got, they got the band back together. They got Carson Wentz. He's stoked for Carson Wentz, and I'm happy for him that they finally have a quarterback. They've had so much quarterback turnover since Andrew Luck left. I feel bad for that franchise, but I don't feel bad enough, I guess, to root for him. So, but I'll go with the Colts then at that point. So yeah, that makes it even, right?
Yep, it does. It does.
Yeah.
Cool. All
right. So Chris, what's your 1 through 7?
So, I'll stay with the Chiefs at 1, Bills at 2, and then after that, yeah, it's kind of a mix. But I'll put a little bit of stock in Carson Wentz and Frank Reich, and I'm actually going to sneak them in at 3.
Yep.
And as far as 4 through 7 goes, I mean, you're probably looking at the Chargers. I think we'll get in as a wild card. I like your idea about the Patriots. I mean, with Bill Belichick, and they did at least make some upgrades in free agency, nothing really big splash, but it's just hard not to think that you can get 8 to 10 wins out of Bill Belichick as long as his quarterback isn't turning the ball over as much as it happened last year. Since that they've left. And then after that, it's kind of tough to predict for me right now. But I definitely feel confident about the Ravens would be in there as well. And then don't forget about the Browns. So yeah, I mean, somewhere 4 through 7, I'd have the Ravens, Browns, Patriots, and the Chargers in some particular order.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go for the division winners. I think Kansas City gets it done too. I think that we get into this next season, and as much as we're saying all fully justified things about free agency, I think we find out that we've got more from a line out of the likes of like the Niangs and the versatility of some of these guys that we're signing. I mean, God only knows what Kyle Long's going to end up being. I would not be shocked if week 1 we roll him out at right tackle, because why not? And next thing you know, he's anchoring the right side of the line. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that worked out, just the way this whole thing's played out. But no, I'm gonna go with the Bills at 2 as well. I think the Colts at 3. I'm 100% on board with that. I'd say the Ravens at 4, and 4 wildcard teams. I started bringing this up last year, that the biggest AFC jump that I expect this year is going to be from Jacksonville. So I'm going to put them in as a wild card team. And then I'm also going to throw in the Patriots and the Chargers. So if you're keeping score at home, I've sent Tennessee, I've sent Cleveland, I've sent them home. And, I could there very well be, scared about this by week 4 of next year, but Jacksonville's one that I can visually picture in my mind Urban Meyer coming in and getting his Jim Harbaugh with the Niners on. and just having all this stuff fall in place. And the thing that he's going to have a benefit of is, a world-class athlete and Trevor Lawrence coming and being his quarterback. And I think Chris was, pretty foreseeing the future, talking about Alex Smith coming in to be a backup for somebody like that. And, there you go. Alex Smith is going to mentor two, potential all-time great quarterbacks, assuming that Lawrence comes in and works out. So anyway, college basketball, I think we have to throw the commentary out. Tucker, you made the comment about being a Mizzou guy. The rest of us are Jayhawk sympathizers. I'm not really sure that anybody saw the Pac-12 coming and being this good at basketball. I'm not sure that it's real, honestly. But I will say that I think it's funny that the Big Ten is obviously not very good at basketball.
Well, guaranteed a Pac-12 team will lose this weekend.
Yeah. That's true.
We're guaranteed a Pac-12 team will lose this weekend. So yeah.
Exactly. I don't
Oregon, USC. So there we go.
I don't see UCLA getting out of this weekend either. But any other commentary aside from, cheers to USC? You guys gave KU the third worst loss in their history. There's nothing else to say. It had nothing to do with, letting them score 85 points. They were going to score. You got to shoot better than 25% or whatever it ended up at, and scoring 51.
The tip of the hat to their defense on that one. They're making plays. They're doing what they could to get in there. And I remember thinking like they had put a lid on that. But I was also thinking like USC, they really are crowding and they're playing the defense. They got to play in order to put the stops and put the pressure on them. So, anyways, I'm sorry, Tucker, I got in your way there. Go ahead and react.
No, that is okay. Well, I will say that the Mobley brothers are the real deal. Those guys can ball, and they will be good at the NBA level. That's really good. Apparently, all you have to do to get a good recruit is just make an assistant coaching job for his dad. Mizzou did it. USC did it. Yeah. So, I mean, that's all you got to do. I wish Konza would make a position open for a top recruit's dad, but nevertheless, we don't have to talk about Mizzou basketball unless you don't want me to. I've got some passionate things to say about that, but as a Mizzou fan, it was kind of fun to see USC kind of dominate that game. But I kind of felt bad towards the end because KU just couldn't make anything, and USC was literally not missing anything. So it's just one of those games where you're just like, man, like they couldn't do anything right, and USC couldn't do anything wrong. And at that point, you're just like, man, like
I remember
a tough night.
I remember going through this whole season watching the Jayhawks go through play well at the very beginning of the season, have that midseason lull, kind of come back from falling out of the rankings and coming back. And then I remember thinking to myself, like, March is going to suck. But I didn't realize it was going to suck this bad. Like, yeah. I was like, whoa, worst turning loss in the history of ever, I guess, that I've ever seen the KU play. Yeah. But I was like, I remember I was not looking forward to it. But then they kind of messed with my emotions there at the end of the season because we were doing really well in terms of playing the quality teams were playing and getting the job done. And then this happens. And I'm just like, I feel played. I feel like my heartstrings have been messed with.
Brian, if you think about it and go back to Josh's analogy of flying a plane to a mountain, look at Kansas's last three tourney losses to Villanova, Auburn, and USC. I mean, you want to talk about going down a ball of fire. They've certainly gotten that down to a T here recently.
But here's the thing. Part of flying the plane into the mountain is buckle up. This is going to be a fun ride until it's not. None of that you just mentioned has been fun.
I remember watching Auburn. True. I remember watching the Auburn game, and my wife, who just started watching KU basketball or college basketball, because she moved here from Ukraine, and we've been together now for 10 years. And when she came here, I met her at college. And so she didn't watch any college basketball at all until she came here to Lawrence, and does, you know how it is. It just becomes part of the culture and you get used to it and it becomes part of you. And so she's watched less than 10 years of college basketball, give or take. And so we play the Auburn game after the Villanova experience, a couple of those raining threes games in March, and Auburn happens and she's watching it, and we're watching the first 6 minutes and they go to the commercial break, and she looks at me and she goes, "So it's one of those games." I'm like, "Yeah, it's one of those games where they make the first 8 3 balls in a row." Yeah. So she refers to those every time you see a ball like a raining threes from the get-go. She's like, "It's one of those." So, but yeah, what a fun, what a great...
look at the it's me, Charles Barkley, and him and his Auburn stuff. Generally like him. Yeah. All right, so last thing on college basketball, Tucker, who do you got winning it all?
It's hard to not pick Gonzaga, right? I mean, they're just dominant. They look like an NBA team. They've got some studs on that team. It's exciting to watch Loyola Chicago or Roberts. It was fun. I always like the Cinderellas, like to see them make a push, but Gonzaga's got to take it from me, man.
Okay, Chris, what do you got?
I'd like to see Gonzaga or Baylor. Baylor, because I would like to see someone from the Big 12 win the national title other than Kansas in the last, how many years.
Yeah.
And then, Gonzaga. I think it'd be really cool to see, the first team since 1976 have an undefeated season. So I think they got a real chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all in on the Zags. I think Mark Few deserves the title, and this year is as good of a reason as any to think that it's going to be his year. I'd love to see him play Baylor in the final, or
10th annual day of giving,
or Loyola. I think that would be a really fun final as well. So, Brian, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was just checking in on I was trying to check out who the Cinderellas were. We have Oral Roberts, right? And then we have that Abilene. Does that Abilene?
Abilene Christians out.
Yeah, they lost.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
And Loyola, though, I listened to Loyola from beginning to end on that one, and that was a lot of fun too. Yeah, it's always fun to see just kind of see what they do. And apparently they had a lot of fun a few years ago. They made it to the Final Four, wasn't it? And they had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And they wanted to.
Jane.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, the easy money would be Zags, but I'm gonna lean Baylor. But I hate leaning into that. I want to see a lot of fun happen. There's a part of me that thinks that one of these other teams that as much as I think Alabama is spoiled with their college football, I'm like, it's interesting to see like a good. Isn't this like the first year they've had made the college football playoffs and the Sweet 16? Like, there's like 3 teams that pulled that off, and this is one of them. Something about that kind of history I kind of enjoy, but I'm thinking it's going to be Baylor running away with it.
So here's the one weird dark horse that I'll throw out. Syracuse is an 11 seed. The lowest seeded team was that 8 seed Villanova team to win a title. The Department of Stranger Things have happened. I cannot stand Syracuse, but I can certainly picture them winning a title as an 11 seed, and that would be a perfect end to whatever it is we're doing right now.
Jim Boeheim, the Rasputin of college basketball.
Rasputin, rah, Rasputin. All right, so the last thing that we always do before we get out of here is just give any kind of last shot. So, Tucker, you have the honor to do that first if you want, or to defer it to Brian if you want to think about it another minute.
Man, I'll defer it to Brian since I don't really know what I'm going to talk about. So I'll go ahead. Brian, you serve it up.
Okay, well, let me off the top of my head here. There was so Josh, I was looking at, we were talking about the the Las Vegas Raiders, and I remember something that came across Instagram that made me laugh. They ranked the top head coaches in the NFL, and I was obviously looking for Andy Reid. He was ranked number 2, and I forget who did this. It was probably some Instagram. I don't think it was like any verified, with the check marks or whatever. I think it was just kind of like someone putting out what their opinions were. But they had Andy Reid at number 2, and I was like, okay, where's that John Gruden guy at? And he was like number 26, and that made me laugh because it reminded me of that one website you shared. That is John Gruden fired yet, or is John Gruden?
Is Gruden gone yet?
and it's just like big.
Tucker, have you seen that? Is GrudenGoneYet.com?
Yes, my colleague Joshua Briscoe is very big on that, and I think he has a little. He's got a bit on his show where he'll always ask, "Hey, is there a website to see if John Gruden is gone yet?" I don't know, so he'll always ask that every now and again when John Gruden is in it. So it's a phenomenal website.
Is Gruden gone yet? No.
So and there was also in addition to that, teams and situations and that leave something to be desired. We're talking about like the projected people to make it the playoffs, and we were talking about the AFC East, and my heart is talking about the Bills and the Patriots. And you know what? I was just hoping my Jets would be part of that conversation, and they were not part of that conversation about making the postseason. But I'm calling it. I think they're going to make it really interesting next season. And because Tucker, I've kind of adopted the Jets as kind of the team I I kind of like pay attention to a little bit more closely than as closely as the Chiefs now, as I've kind of grown attached to them.
Gotcha. Chris, what do you got?
Yeah. Well, so there's been another offseason that's been pretty exciting to me right now, and that involves the Kansas City Royals. So you want to talk about teams that have been signing extensions, man. I'm wondering if this is a sign of things to come. So, I mean, it first started with Hunter Dozier's extension, and then over the weekend, Salvador Perez cashed into the bank here. So, 4 years, over $80 million. I'm wondering if that's going to be, I grew up complaining about the Glass family not actually investing and trying to keep, players like Johnny Damon and Carlos Beltran on with the team. But, now you see that they're already talking to Adalberto Mondesi about a potential extension. And I'm hoping, that's ownership group here, that we might be seeing a much different spending pattern than what we saw under the Glass administration. So, yeah, man, congratulations to Salvi. If I had a cooler full of water right now, I'd give him a Salvi splash. But yeah, that's my parting shot there is go Royals.
Yeah, go Royals.
Yeah, it was great to see that. Last year, the Royals were interesting. They were, I want to say, the only MLB team that actually paid their entire minor league system. And pretty much everybody else furloughed them, which was crazy. And they went into the MLB draft and essentially walked away with 3 times what a normal draft haul is for an MLB team. So yeah, if you're looking for a team that invests in talent, I mean, God only knows if it's going to work out or not, but the Royals are definitely there. So Tucker, you got anything for us?
Man, I did say I had some Mizzou basketball stuff, so I guess I'll talk about Mizzou basketball. The way that Coach Conzo Martin has handled this last little bit of the season made me a little bit disgruntled. I've always been a big trusting Conzo guy. He looks like he's running off some recruits. Xavier Pinson sat on the bench for the last 18 minutes of the game. When he's your best player, you should have him on the floor, especially in a do-or-die game. There's no saving for tomorrow. I know he wasn't playing very good, but having him on the floor at least accounts for a shooter instead of having Drew Buggs, who doesn't even take jump shots. So then you basically can double-team Jeremiah Tillman. It was really frustrating to see how this season ended, because this season was supposed to be the culmination of Conzo's hard work. This was going to be it. They had the experienced team. They started off strong. They beat Illinois. They had a lot of quality, tier 1 wins, and then they just kind of dipped off and fell off and fizzled out, and it was really disappointing to see. So I think Conzo's on the hot seat a little bit here. Xavier Pinson has announced he's going to transfer. He's got an offer from Auburn. Bruce Pearl and Auburn have already offered him a scholarship, I think. I don't know if it's a scholarship or not, but to come and play with the team. So we'll see what happens. I'm a little upset the way that Conzo's contract is structured. He must have the best agent in the world to get the contract structured the way he did, because the Missouri Tigers cannot move on from him without paying him without cause until like May of 2022. And I think making the tournament made that even harder. So we'll see what happens. Next year, Mizzou basketball is not going to be any good. And that's going to be the one year they play Kansas, right? They're supposed to play Kansas this year. It's supposed to be a good game. Kansas was kind of in a down year when they were supposed to schedule them. And then, the Kansas was in their midseason lull. Mizzou was playing well. And I'm thinking, man, Mizzou is going to be able to get Kansas and we're going to be able to do this. And nope. And now we got to play them next year when Mizzou is going to be absolutely garbage. So it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
I'm happy to see that game come together, though. I'm like, here's to that coming back around. That's gonna be a lot of fun.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That just needs to be a thing. Mizzou and Nebraska can come back to the Big 12. It just you don't like where you are, and it doesn't, and we all know it. But anyway, so my last thing that I'm going to throw out, finally the sun's back out again. So with that and the vaccine and everything like that coming around, I'm excited to see there appears to be a light at the end of this unfun tunnel that we've gone through, and I'm excited to get into what's hopefully going to be a halfway normal baseball season, and hopefully a completely normal football season. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And then the last thing I'll say is, Deshaun Watson, get your shit together. This is ridiculous. Stop it.
16.
Well put.
And on that note, good night, Chiefs Kingdom.
Chiefs.